Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking through a breakdown of last year's SATs papers. That's the 2025 SATs papers that have happened. I'm going to break down what they were like, what kinds of questions came up, how they were different to previous years, which year group content was covered, which content domains, which areas came up, so that can help to focus on where you do your revision for the upcoming SATs. So, the first thing to note that it gets slightly more difficult from 2024. The reasoning papers had fewer questions, but there was a rise in 2-mark questions, especially in the second reasoning paper. There was 11 2-mark questions with only 8 in last year's and 7 in 2023. And also 2-mark questions appeared much earlier. You had 7 of the first 15 this year, compared to no 2-mark question appearing early in the paper. For example, the first 2-step problem question in paper 2 was question 11. However, that hadn't happened until usually a 2-mark question is not seen until about question 17. So you had quite a few difficult questions appearing earlier in the paper, questions that need the students to do a little bit more in order to get both marks. Also in the arithmetic paper, decimal questions appeared much earlier, and they're not usually included in the first few questions. So looking at the year group content, so just to be aware, the year 6 SATs is not just testing things that they've learned in year 6, it's testing everything they've learned during Key Stage 2. So that would be year 3 up to year 6. And here you can see the percentage of the year group which is covered within the papers. So this year's paper in 2025, you've got 11% of the content came from the year 3 curriculum, 20% came from the year 4 curriculum, 27% from the year 5 curriculum, and 42% came from the year 6 curriculum. So even without learning what they needed for year 6, if they were confident in everything they'd learned from year 3 to 5, they could have actually still passed their SATs. So it's something to bear in mind that even though, yes, the children do their SATs in year 6, that they're still using learning from those other year groups. So those other year groups are still important. So there you go. Year 3 to 5 are important. And this shows you that in 2024, which is the year before, the percentage required to reach the expected standards, the percentage of marks you needed was 49%. And you could have got that because 52% of the papers came from the year 3 to 5 curriculum. And that's the same in 23, 22, and 2019, it was about the same. So for most of the years, if the children know their stuff from year 3, 4, and 5, then they can do really well. So it's really important. Those years are still important, okay? So the arithmetic paper, this is the first of the 3 papers that they do, and it's really important they score high in this paper, and I'll explain later why in the video. But you can see how the questions are broken down. So these are the areas the children would have to learn about. They call these the content domains. Number and place value, okay, calculation, fractions, decimals, percentages, and order of operations. Now you can see on the arithmetic paper, the number of questions that are calculation is really high, that's 18. Calculation means addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. So it's really important in year 6 that the children know how to do long multiplication, short multiplication, they know how to do long division, they know how to add and subtract effectively, okay, because most of the marks come from those types of questions. The other types of questions are that's highest fractions. Now that could be adding fractions, taking away fractions, finding fractions of amount, multiplying fractions. It could be adding mixed number fractions. And if you were to look on the channel, and you'll see breakdowns of the old arithmetic papers from previous years, you'll see the variety and the different types of fraction questions that come up. So it's really important that the children are confident with their calculations and their fractions. The next highest being decimals, and then after that, percentages, there's a few on there as well. So moving on to the reasoning papers. Again, you have the same content domains, similar, but you have additional ones like ratio and proportion, algebra, shapes, position and direction, and statistics. Now, you'll notice that, again, like with the arithmetic paper, calculation is the highest. Fractions, decimal, FDP stands for fractions, decimals, and percentages. So children being really confident in understanding fractions and converting between fractions and decimals and percentages, understanding how to calculate percentages. All of that is really important because they're covered a lot in the papers. Measurement is also quite high. And I'm going to look at some of those questions later on in the video, and then also number and place value. So place value means children's understanding of identifying numbers up to 1 million and being able to use numbers that are up to 1 million effectively and confidently. So a couple of things to point out with last year's papers in particular. Spatial awareness came up a lot. So these are two example questions. This question is about the children being able to understand that this shape makes the net, is the net of a cube, and it's asking them to show, she wants the cube to have two circles on opposite faces. Draw one circle to complete Olivia's net. So that's asking them about spatial awareness. And this one is draw the reflection of the shaded shape in the mirror line. So it's a reflection question. And they would get a mirror to be able to do this, but it's just saying that there was more questions on spatial awareness and understanding these types of questions last year. And paper 2 contains 7 questions that involve measurement or unit conversions. Paper 3 included 6 questions focused on measurement. Some of the questions required children to convert between units, including the less common conversion from millimeters to meters. So last year, there was a lot of questions about measurement, okay? Either weight, distance, okay, and converting. That means how many millimeters are there in a meter? Can they do the calculation to convert? If you had, what would 5 meters be in millimeters? So being able to convert between the two. So measurement came up a lot in last year's paper. Okay, so each year does include a 3-mark question, and in recent years it appeared late in the paper, but in 2025 it was earlier. So question 17 in last year's paper was a tricky question that involved 3 marks. Okay, 3 marks usually indicates more steps, but not necessarily greater difficulty or complexity. So, for example, last year's question involved them doing long multiplication followed by long division. Now, if your child is confident doing long multiplication, long division, and breaking it down to those steps, then those should be easy marks for the child to get. You should be able to get all of those 3. But even if they can only do part of it and they show they're working, then they should score some marks on that type of question. Okay, so what was missing? This is always interesting because something that didn't come up last year might come up next year. And across all 3 papers, there was no questions on Roman numerals, but the children do need to know those. Rounding or estimating didn't come up. Using factor pairs, rounding decimals, divisions with answers up to 2 decimal places, similar shape problems using scale, expressing missing number problems using algebra, to generate and describe linear number sequences. So number sequences didn't come up. Perimeter and area didn't come up last year, but I always think they're easy marks to get. So they may come up next year. Classifying shapes didn't come up. So understanding that, identify all the shapes that have 4 straight lines or 4 right angles, or what do you call a shape that has this many sides? Parts of a circle, that didn't come up. So calculating the radius or diameter of a circle. And the mean didn't come up, which is a shame because I also think calculating the mean are also easy marks. So just bear in mind, is your child confident with these things? Because they could come up next year. Okay, so preparing your child for the SATs in Year 6. So based on what I've talked about so far, you can see kinds of things that came up in last year's paper, and we also talked about things that were missing. But if your child is in Year 6 or starting Year 6, then it's important to do some of these things. These are good tips. So definitely ask the teacher how they're doing. You'll get a chance in the first parents' evening, but if you did want to see them before then, wait a couple of weeks, wait till they've settled in, and they may have done an assessment on them by that point. And you just check in with the teacher, ask them, do they think they're on track to pass? Is there anything they need to work on? So if they're not on track, which the teacher might be honest about, which a good teacher should, they may say, well, they're doing really well here and here, but they need some support with reading, or they're stuck on grammar, they need to work on their grammar. And then that shows you some of the things that you could do with them at home and help them on. In regards to maths, definitely focus on arithmetic. And I'll tell you why. Because the arithmetic paper is out of 40, and it's easier than the reasoning papers. I say this a lot in videos about the SATs. If they can score high in the arithmetic paper, for example, in an ideal scenario, they got 40 out of 40, the overall pass mark for maths is 56, so they only need 16 more marks to get 56 from the other 2 papers. So essentially they could get 8 on one paper and 8 on the other, and they could still pass. Now bear in mind the reasoning papers are out of 35. So that shows you if they do really well in that first arithmetic paper, they stand a really good chance to pass overall. Don't be afraid to ask for help, okay? This is for children and parents. If a child is stuck, the worst thing they can do is sit in the classroom trying to pretend they know how to do it or copying off a partner and then not getting help until it's too late in the year. So if you're really stuck with something, ask. The teachers will always help you. If you feel that they're really behind and they could do with some extra tuition, or you're aiming for them to get greater depth and you really want them to do better than the expected standard, you could seek extra tuition, because I know that that really does help. But just make sure that the tuition that you're getting is best from a qualified teacher, and usually a teacher that's got Key Stage 2 or Year 6 experience. And also check out the walkthrough videos on YouTube, because I go through all the past papers, grammar, reading, and maths. I explain how to answer all the questions, and it's all free and it's all on there. So check out the channel. And if you start doing it now, you stand a good chance of knowing how your child would get on with the real thing. Okay, so there's the channel, Teachers That Tutor. That's how you're probably watching this video. So please subscribe to the channel if you like this video and you want more videos on primary education. I don't just cover Year 6, I cover all primary years. And hit a like if you found the video useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.